So welcome everybody. People in Rush are known for being extremely prompt and on time. So here we are, 6:33, already broke the promise. Anyway, I'm Ted Barnett. I've been a Rush citizen since 1986, so 32 years, and I'm moderating this forum tonight. And first of all, I'd just like to thank representatives from the town, Jerry Fusi from the Rush Town Board, for coming tonight, and also and Don Roof from the Rush Conservation Board. Where's Don? There's Don. Thank you. And I want to introduce everybody else in the room. I don't know everybody, but first I'm going to introduce Janet Chase, who's going to be introducing our speaker. So,
hi everybody, you're in for a real treat with our speaker, Deb DeMille. I first heard her speak about 8 or 9 years ago. And it was a whole symposium, and that was the only one that I really learned and integrated into my life. And she was talking about using herbs for healing. And she's been reveling in her relationship with the natural world now since she was a very young child. The field and forest provide both livelihood and sanctuary for her and many of the other people that she works with. She's an herbal educator, horticultural therapist, forest therapy guide, and director of Shimmering Light Farm and Renewal Center, a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to exploring and inspiring more conscious and regenerative ways of life. She's also co-owner of Finger Lakes Forest Therapy and formerly served as vice president of training and curriculum development for 2 international publishing companies. Deb is passionate about helping people to deepen their own relationship with nature, each other, and their own true nature. She's very generous. I know from working in the field of domestic violence and other areas that she's given of herself so much to having people come out to the farms and experience healing and getting out of the city, and just one of the most generous souls I've ever met. So without further, and by the way, if you want to learn more about her, maybe she'll say more about this, but just Google Shimmering Light Farm and you'll find out about the many wonderful workshops that they offer, probably every few weeks. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you. So, yes, I actually grew up in Honey Falls, right around the corner, so I was a neighbor to Rush, spent a lot of time in Rush, and about 19 years ago moved to South Bristol, and with some other women who were, some of us had life-threatening illnesses with our children going on, and some with our parents, and we were trying to decide how we could apply our skills in education and training to something that was closer to our hearts and homes that would integrate the generations, and we decided to start this educational community farm. And out of that grew my interest in horticultural therapy, and then subsequently forest therapy, which is very closely related under the umbrella of ecotherapy, which is also where pet therapy and equine therapy lives, as well as other nature-based therapies. So yeah, maybe just as we start, and we're going to be talking about this beautiful parkland later that's been donated to the town. If you guys could just take a moment and conjure up or bring to mind either a tree or a forest area that has been important to you at some point in your life, or just meaningful to you in some way. You could just take a moment to do that. So as you think about that place with the tree or the forest, what are some of the words or feelings that just come up to you as you're reflecting on that place, this upward mount?
Peaceful, calming, serenity.
seems like that's what you want to provide for your community here with the park and the forest. And forest therapy actually grew out of this desire. I'm certified by the International Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. And this is a quote from the founder, Amos Clifford. Can you guys hear me? I can never know how far to be from it. Regenerative cultures are rooted in deep relationship with the more than human world of nature. Without regenerative relationships, cultures develop flaws that lead to their undoing. I think we've all experienced this in different ways in our life, whether it's personal health flaws or environmental flaws or relationship with community flaws. And this is really the core of forest therapy, which is also known as forest bathing, which is also known as Shinrin-yoku, which is the Japanese word, which I'll talk about that in just a moment. But it's at the core of this reconnective practice of reconnecting people with forests for health and well-being of us as humans, but also for the health and well-being of the natural world that we inhabit. So humans totally evolved in forests. The earth used to be covered in forests. And if you think about an evolutionary time scale, it's really been just since this morning that we invented cities. If you look at the whole time frame of since humans have been on the earth. And just before our lunchtime today, we became industrialized societies. So our minds, our bodies, our spirits, it's in our DNA. We are meant to connect with the forest, and this disconnection that we have with living the fast-paced lives that we all lead and juggling lots of things and traveling in cars and working indoors a lot. It has separated us from our own true nature because our true nature is connected to all of the nature around us. So I don't know if you guys read recently, now the majority of human beings on Earth live in massive urban centers. So some people don't have really any connection or very little access to nature. And so this separation started being studied in Japan in the 1980s during the height of their stress epidemic and what they would call death by work, which was people taking their own lives because they were so stressed out, a very high suicide rate in Japan. And they started researching what could help people. And 30 years of in-depth research, they've come up with forest bathing, which is taking in the energy of the forest. And there are specific ways that we can do that, but I'll get back to that later. So that's one of the things that the type of forest bathing that I'm trained in was initiated in Japan, and it's now all over the world. And they're saying that at least a third of the Japanese population goes out on the weekends now to these. There used to be 60, but there's growing every day number of certified forest therapy trails and guides. And you can even sign up for, forest therapy for school bullies, and forest therapy for expectant mothers, and forest therapy for those healing from some forms of cancer. So they're very specific, and it's integrated with the health system, which is a dream of ours here. And in this country, we're probably a little far behind on that score, but you never know. So I was just talking to Beth, who is a third grade teacher, and she was talking about just hearing the new statistics on kids and screen time, spending 7 hours a day on screens, and some never spending time playing outdoors. Actually, many, a large percentage of the population not spending time outdoors. And have you heard the term nature deficit disorder? It's sort of, it's not an actual disorder, although it is in a way, but it's not recognized by the medical field. But there's been books published on the effect on children and attention spans, and even on us as adults on our attention. Like, we're so lacking in attention and being able to focus and follow through on things in many ways, and with, ADD and ADHD and lots of other stress-related illnesses in children that we never saw before, and with them now having predicted to to be a shorter lifespan than our own, that's just devastating to me. It's heartbreaking that today's children are expected to live less long than we are. And the World Health Organization now says that stress is the health epidemic of the 21st century worldwide. And as we're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from the natural world. It's just this spiral that keeps going. Another thing I'll mention here in terms of what's underlying causes is deforestation, because we have deforested a very large percentage of the planet, and there's incredible new research out. We know that trees hold water and that they mediate the atmosphere, and that these big storms that we're having are because of fewer trees, but even newer research that in the tree canopies, because we haven't really studied tree canopies very much, there's hundreds of chemicals, that we don't even know what they do, but the ones that we do know what they do are antiviral and antibacterial and antifungal. And they're keeping the forests healthy, and they're keeping the animals that live in the forest healthy, and they're keeping us healthy. And all of the really invasive diseases that are coming up, like Zika and Lyme and even HIV, they actually start in animal populations that become unhealthy due to deforestation, and then they come into human populations. So it's just like the web of how everything is interconnected. We're still learning every day. It's amazing what some of the research that we're just starting to touch on. So the Japanese research has demonstrated profound physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual benefits and cognitive of spending time in conscious connection with the forest. Some of their research is even just not even that conscious, just like going out when you've had a busy day and traipsing through the forest, even if your mind is still spinning and you're thinking about all the stuff you have to do, you still get benefits, But forest bathing is really about helping people to come out of their minds and still their minds and come into our bodies and start relating to the forest in a more present way. And in addition to Japan, South Korea is actually now considered the leader in forest bathing, and they have a whole ministry. It's integrated with the national park system and the Forestry Service, and we're starting that conversation over the last 6 months here in the US. And there's going to be some exciting announcements soon with the National Park Service and the Forest Service, so we're very excited about that. There's already park prescription programs in many communities, and we're looking at that here as well. Germany, Finland, New Zealand, and us here are all making great strides in integrating it more into all aspects of the health system versus the disease management system, the health system. So, some of the benefits. On the physical side of things, spending time in a forest lowers our blood pressure and improves our pulmonary function, reduces inflammation in the body, boosts immunity, accelerates recovery from illness and surgery, reduces blood glucose levels, and improves sleep. This is just sort of a summary list. There's a lot more things, but the immunity piece is really fascinating to me because some of those chemicals that are in the treetops, and especially concentrated in evergreen trees, they're called phytoncides, and as soon as we breathe them, somebody mentioned the smell of the forest, the scent of the forest, as soon as we breathe them, here I'll go on to the next. Our cortisol levels come down in our body, our serotonin levels come up, but the natural killer cells, we have these NK cells in our body that attack cancer cells and they attack viruses and bacteria. Even in 15 minutes of being in the forest, our natural killer cells boost dramatically, and it stays that way for up to 30 days. It's amazing what a difference it makes. And I was leading a forest therapy walk yesterday for a family reunion, and there was 4 teenage girls who were part of the family reunion, and 2 of them had come down with strep throat during the reunion, and 2 of them had not. And when I mentioned this at the end, they're like, oh, those guys never did any of the forest walks that they didn't hang out in the ravine, they didn't swim in the gully, they didn't do this, they were always in the house. And we probably didn't get it because we've been out in the evergreens. There's a lot of hemlocks in the gully where their family reunion was, and it was sort of fun to imagine that connection. So, of course, that all plays into our mental health, and I'm sure you all know that we, as well as physical health epidemics, we have mental health epidemics going on with all sorts of issues. And so as our cortisol levels come down, it reduces our stress, our anxiety, our anger, those ruminating thoughts that just spin around in our minds. And as serotonin comes up, we have a better mood, and we experience more pleasure in life. And people report a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose that they often didn't feel when they were feeling more disconnected. So we shift from our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more calm and cool, or some people call it rest and digest. So there's a lot, meditation helps us get there as well, and yoga and different things. And forest bathing is sort of unique in that it's an active experience. So people say, I can't meditate, I can't do yoga or whatever. Everybody can take a gentle walk in the forest, and we even have ADA trails in South Bristol where I live, where we take people in wheelchairs, and so everybody can participate. It's really amazing. We had a participant recently, actually a friend of yours, Janet, who said, I am a lifelong hiker and a 20-year meditator, and this walk provided a remarkable reduction in my mental chatter and constant worry. I feel profoundly peaceful, and I don't often get that on my own. So, even people who are out in the woods all the time, this practice, really, it's designed and carefully researched to bring us into a relaxed, peaceful space. And one of my favorite authors is John Muir and Conservationists, and I love his quote that you see everywhere. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees. The winds will blow their own freshness into you, and the storms their energy, while cares will drop off like autumn leaves. And that's really what happens. So this is pretty fascinating research too, related to our cognitive function. And the Harvard Business Review actually last August published an article saying that the number one thing that employers are looking for in employees is creativity, and the number one way to get that is nature connection. Because nature brings us out of that constant thinking state of mind and brings us into a more creative state of mind, but it also models for us a system that works. And people often on our walks get these profound insights all of a sudden. Like this one woman was just saying that she'd been struggling with this work issue for a long time, and she just sat and watched this spider spin its web for like 20 minutes. And she got totally absorbed in it, how it was happening, and all of a sudden the solution just came to her. I wasn't thinking about the problem. She was just in a relaxed state of mind. So, and there's a whole field called biomimicry now, and where there's this, major corporations are working into their engineering processes how to mimic what's going on in the natural world, so whatever we're building can be more efficient, more sustainable, more able to fix itself. And Janine Benyus is the founder of the Biomimicry Institute that studies how, if we mimic what's going on in the natural world, we become more sustainable. She says, learning about the natural world is one thing. Learning from the natural world, that's the switch. That's the profound switch. So I don't know about you guys, but I was raised up like learning the names of everything, the names of the trees and the herbs and the birds, and about their habits and what they do. And sometimes I could think, I know the names of I can identify 300 plants, herbs that can be used medicinally in the wild. But how well do I really know those plants? How many plants do I really know intimately? Have I seen from when they first come out of the ground and through all of their life cycles, and when to harvest them, and what they grow near, and what animals come and eat them, and all the things that you notice by living with something closely through the seasons. how much do I really know about the natural world versus what I can name? So forest therapy brings us into this deeper knowing place where we really slow down and observe things much longer than we might have usually done. And the research is finding our mental fatigue and confusion is decreased, our attention is restored and the ability to stay focused much longer, increases clarity and creativity, that innovation part, and enhances our problem-solving capability, which I know I need just in my everyday life, just managing everything I manage, much less the big problems of the world, the huge things. So, how are we going to come up with sustainable solutions for our planet if we're not listening to the other beings who live here, all the more than human beings? And that's a question that's being posed at the United Nations right now. How can we listen and give a voice to the more than human beings who inhabit our world so that they can be heard? We can understand their roles and how they support us. Everything supports us almost effortlessly. The ground that we walk on is always there to support our feet, and the air, the trees are creating this amazing oxygen for us to breathe, and the birds are singing. Somebody else said an orchestral of the forest, all the sounds that uplift us, these things happen through no effort of our own. They're just there for us, and the timber for our homes, and the, water to drink and clean with, and just everything that's on this earth. We didn't do anything to get it there. It's there, but we can sure destroy it fast and, make it so that it's not available for us anymore. So what we're finding, and I think, it was Jacques Cousteau who originally famously said, people protect what they love. Forest therapy and these walks in the forest helps people to connect. And we see how the forest cares for us, and then we come to care for the forest. And this is research that was actually done at the University of Rochester that concluded that nature exposure leads to valuing community and connectedness over more superficial concerns such as personal gain or fame. We become more empathetic, generous, and willing to share with others and care for the environment. So, another one of my favorite authors, has anybody read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer? Yeah, it's awesome. She's a Native American and also a botanist who teaches at SUNY ESF, and so she weaves together her indigenous knowledge and wisdom with the scientific side of things. It's a really beautiful study about our part of the country here. She says, knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate the earth. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond. And that's the reciprocity that this slide talks about, and leading back to regenerative relationships that the first slide talked about, is, we're at a precipice here of huge disconnection from the natural world in ourselves and our children, the future generations. And so this is a very simple but powerful practice that helps people connect, and there's lots of other amazing programs going on that you guys can run at your town riverside park, 100-acre park, to help people reconnect. There's a lot of books out. I don't know if you've read any of these. I think in the last 6 months there's been 5 books on forest bathing alone published, and they've been on the top of the Amazon environmental literature list, along with Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. The Nature Fix is a really good one because she consolidates a lot of the research. She was more of a journalist rather than a writer, and she went on her own adventure of reconnecting with nature and to see how it would change her life, but then weaves in all of the latest research. So I would highly recommend these books. And we were really excited that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has added a list, a whole page of a lot of the latest research on all these benefits that I mentioned all in here about benefits of forest connection. You can access the links and the actual research projects and papers through there. And the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides also has a list. Some of them are repeats and some of them are not. So I thought I would just share a story that just happened this morning. I was guiding a walk so our forest therapy business has a pay it forward policy where those who can pay a little bit more to provide walks for those who can't. And I do a monthly walk for the Ontario County Day Reporting Program. It's an alternative to incarceration. And it's usually young people with like low-level drug charges that they're trying to keep out of jail. And, you know, these kids have been through so much already in their lives, and it's amazing. So usually the walk starts with about half of them like this. And part of forest therapy is, so we give these invitations that are maybe 15-minute invitations of a way to connect with the forest. And I tell them, and if the invitation doesn't really mean anything to you or you don't resonate with it, just find something in the forest that you find really appealing and go check it out and study it. And they're like, sort of looking at each other like, it's not a rule. We don't have to do the invitation. They don't really believe it yet. And then we come back in between each invitation and we each share what we're noticing in the forest. And because most of us notice something different, it expands our awareness of what's going on pretty quickly and dramatically. So, and that's optional as well. You know, we have somebody picks up a leaf or a stick or a stone or something and passes it around and we just share what we're noticing. And, you know, this morning, this one young woman, she's like, I ain't saying nothing on the first go around. And then they go back out and they're noticing some more. And the second go around, she's like, she just passed it quietly. She didn't say anything, but she was getting softer, you know, but she still passed. And the next time, she's like, I've just been seeing these little tiny snails everywhere. I mean, they've been under our feet the whole time and I didn't even know they were there. And And she's noticing like what the snails are eating and what the babies look like and what the moms look like. And then on the next invitation, she came back with 2 snails on this leaf and she's like, I just want to take them home and take care of them. I'm like, that's it right there. It's just it right there. And the whole group softens and, you know, people start getting, so that's just a 1-hour walk. A standard forest therapy walk as it's done in Japan and the way we prefer to do it is 3 hours. And people, that's when you really get into the innovative and creativity zone where people start getting all these insights about their life and, you know, their work and new solutions start coming up. But it is a little challenging to get people to commit to 3 hours. I see a number of people in this room, a small number, but a number of people in this room who have committed that 3 hours to forest therapy walks, so thank you. And there's actually a group of physicians who has started referring people to our walks locally, which is just amazing. Even though they're not covered by insurance, we do not turn away anyone for lack of ability to pay. So that's where the pay it forward thing comes in as well. So questions, I've been talking a lot about questions. Do you all have?
Where do you walk?
So we can walk anywhere. We do check out the trails in advance, and we have trails in the city, we have trails in suburban areas, we have trails in the Finger Lakes, South Bristol, that we check them for these 60 criteria that they don't have to meet every criteria, but there's definitely criteria that make them more accessible and convenient, so.
I mean, what's your definition of a forest? I mean, I have 4 acres. Is that a forest or?
That's a really good
bigger,
question.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, so like the walk I did this morning is right outside the jail and like a hedgerow along a field. And, you know, there was all these wildflowers and there's a couple tall trees, and so it can work anywhere. You tend to get more of the immune system boosting benefits the deeper of a forest that you're in, because of all the phytoncides are more concentrated. But you get all the other benefits really wherever you are. Yep.
So what should we be doing to protect like forest programs and stuff like that?
To
Protect it, like keep it going.
That is a good question. I think you're going to have some opportunities to get involved locally. They're going to come up here after I'm speaking, is that correct? Yep. And certainly, if you're connected, you know, I personally don't spend a lot of time working with children now that my children are grown, and my programs are mostly for adults, but we're developing, there's another forest therapy guide in our region now, Teresa Keys, and she works in the school system. So, you know, we're looking at that, but if you have kids that are connected to your life, just, you know, take them outside and play and, you know, walk in the forest and splash at a creek and just all those things that connect us that kids don't do these days. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. So it seems so obvious, right? But yet we need these scientific articles to prove that it's really good for you, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason we need these scientific articles is so we can consider it medical therapy. So I'm one of the physicians who loves to send you our people, and you know, it's to me really fascinating. But can you tell us where the scientific, where the articles are written that people can look?
So these two websites here have the articles totally outlined, and there's more research every day though, so I don't think either one of these is totally staying up on it, but even if you do, you know, Google, thank goodness for Google, right? Searches, but there's good starting lists on here that then will take you other places as well.
That's good.
Just to follow in on that, is this available, is this PowerPoint available to us? Because I'm also a professor.
Oh,
and
nice.
I'd like my students to engage in this, and of course, we have to support it scientifically.
Right.
Because they won't say they wouldn't believe it, but it adds more credibility.
Yeah, I don't see why we can't make it available if you write your email addresses.
Right.
Or is there a better way to get it to people, the presentation?
Put it up on the Safe Rush parkland website.
You'll be
Okay,
able to
that
download.
sounds great.
That's good. You'll be able to download it from the website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
Talk about, invitations for getting them aware. What would an example be?
So an invitation, well, the first invitation we always do is called Pleasures of Presence, and we just tune into each of our senses individually, and most of them with our eyes closed, because we usually take in the world mostly through our eyes and our sight. And we tune into all the things that we're hearing, all the things that we're smelling, all the things that, and there's fun ways to do it. That's the other thing about forest therapy. It's fun, it's engaging, it's pleasurable, you know, when people are enjoying themselves and they're relaxing. So, but it might be as simple as, you know, notice how many different colors of green you can count right now or something like that. And it's like your mind starts going, whoa, you know, and just comes into this feeling of green just comes into you that's, you know, your mind can't comprehend. But there's simpler ones and more complex ones. We tend, as the walk goes on, to just get a little more complex and invite people to actually, you know, let themselves be called to a more than human being, whether it's a tree or a rock or whatever, and learn as much as they can about it. And it's amazing what people come back with. It's really amazing.
We probably should get moving along.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
So our next speaker is Carol Ralph, who will be giving a presentation. Thank you. She has her own microphone.
Hey, good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight as a member of a group of Rush citizens who've been working on a proposal designed to preserve 100 acres of parkland in the area known locally as the Rush Riverside Refuge. Our proposal has at its core these values. We'd like to honor the deed for the 100 acres, which restricts uses to only those compatible with park and recreation, to ensure that there's no cost to taxpayers for the park. We'll enlist volunteers and community partners to help build and maintain the park, protect the character of our rural community, and increase access to nature, which can improve physical and mental health, which we just heard all about. Oops. There we go. These are our desired outcomes we want to achieve from our proposal. So we want to see to it that this land remains open and available to the public as the deed indicates. We'd like to promote farm-related recreational and educational activities in keeping with our town's history as a small family farm community with an interest in New York State specialty crops. Habitat for birds, bees, other pollinators, and wildlife will be maintained and restored as necessary. The almost 50 acres of natural growth forest will be preserved, and trails will be developed to accommodate visitors of all ages and abilities. So how did Rush come to get this park? Well, in 2008, the Rush Town Board entered into negotiations with the state of New York to acquire land that was no longer needed as part of the industry complex. In 2010, New York State agreed to transfer the land to the town of Rush. The terms of the deed were that the land was to be used for activities consistent with park and recreation. And if the town decided not to adhere to those terms, then the land would be taken back by the state of New York. Between the years of 2012 and 2017, the town-appointed committee, made up of Rush citizens who volunteered their time, worked to identify recreational activities grounded in farming, science, history, and nature. During the same time, the town also entered into a lease agreement which allowed non-recreational farming on part of the property. In 2017 and again in 2018, the board passed resolution to formally request that the state legislature change the deed for the 100.5 acre parcel permanently to allow farming and timbering activities which are not restricted to recreation. In both 2017 and 2018, the New York State legislature didn't pass that deed change. So here's a map showing the 320 acres. The 100.5 acre parcel is outlined in purple. The southernmost end of the property is bordered by Rush. I always get that backward. The northernmost end of the property is bordered by, no, I had it right, sorry, let me start again. The southernmost end of the property is bordered by Rush Scottsville Road, also known as Route 251. The northernmost end is bordered by Henrietta. Specifically, there's a housing tract adjacent to the property. The houses that back up to the park are on a street called South End Square. The eastern side of the parcel is bordered by the Bosse's property where the Monroe County Fair is currently being held, and by the Railroad Museum. And on the west side is the Genesee River. The land has strategically valuable assets on two sides. On the east, the Railroad Museum, which could be a valuable partner, and the western border is more than a mile of Genesee riverfront. The property is located in a floodplain that contains wetlands, springs, and streams. There's 4 fields which are separated by hedgerows, native shrubs, mature trees, and drainage streams. At the request of the former town supervisor, Monroe County Soil and Water performed an assessment in which it recommended protecting the trees and vegetation growing along the banks of the river and between the fields. Those plants serve important functions. They reduce soil erosion, shade both the river and streams, which help control the growth of algae, and they filter non-point source pollutants before they enter the water. Our proposal contains these features. we are sharing with you tonight. Creation of a nonprofit association to raise funds from private donations and seek grants to preserve land. This strategy would ensure no cost to taxpayers and allow for fundraising. By New York State law, towns are not permitted to fundraise. A separate entity like a nonprofit association is needed to perform that function. Implementation of a plan that preserves habitat, removes invasive species, monitors trees, minimizes erosion, maintains trails and signs, and ensures public safety. Best practices provided by expert partners like Monroe County Soil and Water, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and others will be followed to protect natural land features in the watershed. The goal will be to eliminate current non-point pollution from the property to keep it from entering the Genesee and to end the use of agrochemicals that harm pollinators and wildlife. Volunteer opportunities will be available for the public to get involved with beautification and maintenance activities. Our vision is to create a unique place where visitors can experience nature, where they can find havens for birds and other wildlife, learn about the historical riverbed, farm fields, and enjoy the mature forests, wetlands, and riverfront. We'll pursue a partnership with the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. Developing that relationship will be mutually beneficial. We can partner with the museum when seeking grants that can be used for both land and museum improvements and activities. Partnerships with area colleges and universities, the Scouts, 4-H, and civic organizations can strengthen marketing and promotional opportunities. These partnerships can be used to coordinate activities like the design of walking trails and special events, or to help with fundraising and sponsorship. Our vision is to promote recreation farm activities like creating havens for pollinators, by planting native wildflowers and shrubs, beekeeping, tapping existing maple trees for syrup, establishing a memorial tree park by planting oaks and maples, planting specialty crops in partnership with New York State Department of Agriculture and area farmers, as well as historic crop gardens based on existing models. Beautification projects will include the planting of perennial and landscape gardens. In summary, the 100-acre parcel of land has unique features and a rich history. Its location on Route 251 provides potential to create an easily accessed natural refuge. The mile of Genesee River that borders the land puts this park on the map. This park offers so many opportunities to develop regional, state, and national partnerships. We don't want this opportunity to slip away unnoticed. So what you can do to help, if you support the preservation of public land or any of the activities in this proposal, your signature on our petition can help make it a reality. Contact elected officials at the state and local level to express your support of our park. Show up at the town board meetings, send an email or written letter, or give them a call and ask them to answer your questions. Share this information with your family, neighbors, friends, and encourage them to get involved. And finally, provide your email address so you can be included in upcoming activities to preserve the park. We also have some recent updates to share. This Thursday, we have a meeting with Town Supervisor Kathy Frank, and just yesterday, we had a very positive meeting with the farmer currently working the fields. So now I'll turn the floor over to Ted Barnett, who will facilitate the question and answer period.
Thank you, Carol. So while our members of the committee are coming up, I just want to introduce, there's a candidate for running for New York State Assembly, Barbara Bear is here, and she's interested in what's going on. So let's take questions from the floor, and I'll pass the microphone around. Here we go.
I'm eager to write letters to elected officials who would have a role in the decision. Is there a list of names and addresses to make it easy for me to communicate?
There is, if you go to the saverushpark.org website, there is a page there that lists the link to the town board and also a place where you can get your state officials' names and email addresses.
Who else?
Certainly I don't need a microphone.
I'm a new resident of Rush, and I'm rather confused as to why timbering and farming would be allowed on this land. I don't understand why that's being accepted. Does anyone have an explanation for that?
Somebody on the panel want to? Mary Ann.
The timbering was a proposal, and it was presented by the New York State, our town asked the New York State Senate to pass legislation, and they did for 2 years in a row, but then it got stalled in the Assembly 2 years in a row, so right now it's not slated, it's not going to be timbered, but it could change. But the land, half of the land has been farmed, and we thought it was a stopgap measure just for the time being. So the town thought they could make some money, and they were trying to do good for the townspeople. But it was just for the time being until maybe the park was established. So we don't expect that it would continue, especially after the legislation was passed.
My name is Cecil Palmer. I can kind of follow up a little bit on what she just said. I think it's a good question. You know, why can't we cut the timber there, and why can't we continue the farming? In our opinion, the trees that are healthy and not in danger of anything should not be cut down. The only trees that should be removed are trees that are diseased or may create harm to somebody that's in the park. As far as farming is concerned, there's always that possibility of looking at organic farming. Organic farming is less harmful to the environment, to the wildlife, to your pollinators. So there's options there that you could have besides just normal commercial farming.
No. So Mike, I'm a member of the New York Forest Owners Association. The trees that are on that land, as far as I can see, are extremely valuable. Sorry.
So you've walked the land?
I've seen the land, and black walnut trees go for up to $20,000 a piece. So to just say timber it and take it down is sacrilege, actually, for forest owners. And so I'm wondering, why is there any farming allowed at all on this land? Why is it not being returned to sort of natural forested state?
Ideally, that would be the best approach.
But didn't we hear from your presentation that the town board wanted the deed to change? That's what I'm confused about.
Yeah, that's my
Position
point.
of
That's
the
my
town
point,
board.
exactly.
We can't speak for the town board, so you would, have to address your questions to them and have them answer it. But as Mary Ann said, initially it was the understanding of the committee that it was a stopgap measure while they got plans for the park up and running. And then, I think that what they said at the May 9th meeting was that they wanted to get some money for buildings on the Bosse's property, and that they saw this as a way to make money for that purpose.
But you're right, the point was to change the deed so that would be allowed, right?
Right, and the reason for the deed change for the agriculture was because there are permanent changes that the farmer who's leasing the property now wanted to make, and he wouldn't be able to make those changes unless there was a deed change, and that was to increase the tillable acres, which was why they wanted to make those changes.
So let me just, Hans wants to make a point.
Let me come up here. I'll sit down because I'm nervous. So this goes way back. My name's Hans Schmidt-Henry, for those of you who don't know me.
Put it close to your mouth.
My name's Hans Schmidt-Henry. I'm a research professor at RIT. I'm also friends with town board member who's Jerry Kuzik, who's over here. And I've questioned the town board frequently. I email Kathy Frank now and then, and I talk to my friend Jerry, who's on the town board. There's a lot of misinformation here. I looked at the website a couple weeks ago, and I wrote Carol. There was even a statement on there in a video that there's plans to clear cut the entire area, and I told her that's absolutely false. So she kindly got the video removed from the website. The town board has always been trying to act in their best interest. They're not the enemy here. They shouldn't be demonized. Historically, to answer your question, this land was farmed, at least the field shown. Now there's the other parcel on the other side of the railroad tracks that for some reason nobody's contesting the farm there. It's the one on East River Road. It's the larger piece, and it's being farmed there by Howlett, who farms the cornfields, and by, I believe, Billy Chase, who raises cattle. And there's never been any contest for that aspect. So the one piece of property is already being farmed. And about half of that, just roughly, is what I call scrub forest or scrub jungle. I just biked through there Sunday, 2 days ago. I was there, I got off my bike and I walked through the entire property too. The part to the east of the railroad tracks, in my opinion, shouldn't be separated in totality from the part west. For some reason, we're carving off this 100-acre piece to the left and considering it as its own, probably because it has a separate deed, which was written to not allow farming. Now, it's my understanding from talking to a lot of people that the original intent was to continue the farms there, and that income would help fund the rest of the acreage. So, as far as the hardwood section of that forest, it's about half, 50 acres or so. There's never been any intent to lumber there, ever. There was a forester brought in, I believe, for his opinion about how to maintain that. But the town has never entertained, never considered selling any of that timber for profit or whatever. So you can get that out of your minds. I went through there the other day. It's in as mint condition as it was when I first went through there about 5 years ago. And there's never been an intent of the town to change that forested property.
Hans, did you have a question for the panel?
No, I just wanted to correct all of these misinformations because I think it's really important to stick to the
I would
truth
like
here.
to address that one point that you just made, is that how can we say what the intent of the town board
Because
is?
I asked each of them.
We have asked them too, and we've been told that they don't have a permanent
And what
vision.
has to happen is for the town board and your committee to get together and some outside meetings.
We have a meeting with Kathy Frank on Thursday.
The other thing that has to happen is people outside this room. Okay? This is a small minority of the residents in Rush. Rush is a huge thousands of people. So we cannot in this room represent the entire town, what has to happen that way.
Nor do we intend to.
Thank you. So, but we need to drill down to the truth and not put inflated statements on these websites.
There was a mistake in the video. We acknowledged that and took it down as soon as you called it to our attention, and we
The first
do appreciate
page,
that.
the first
feedback.
page has all kinds of mistakes on it too. It's very misleading, first page. I'll give up my time now.
Thank you, Hans. So could you just address the question about the two deeds? Apparently there's the one deed said we're farming on one side of the tracks but not the other. Can you talk about that? Well, what he was talking, Hans was talking about there's separate pieces of property. You want to talk about that?
Yes, there's separate pieces of property. The parcel on the west is 100 acres, the parcel on the east is 200 acres. And I think the reason we're addressing the western parcel is that it's more endangered at this point. We don't not care about the eastern parcel. We also care about that. In some ways it's more complicated. It has a lot of buildings. There's a lot of activity that's been brought in. It's hosted Boy Scout activity. It's hosted the Monroe County Fair. As I say, we don't not care about it, but it seems a very clear case on the western parcel to preserve a gem of a property along the Genesee River, a totally untouched, undeveloped parcel. And while I have the mic, I just want to say a couple of things that I've heard people say. It's like, well, we're only a few people here. We're just a small group here and even a smaller group up here who have been working on this issue, and how can we decide for the town? And what I would say is we're not deciding. The town board decided, a previous town board decided when it accepted this property under the terms of Park and Recreation. They decided for us. And we're just reminding the town board and everybody in the town, everybody we can get to listen, is that that's when we accepted as a town, we accepted it for the people of this town as public land. The other thing that I want to say, in what I hope is a receptive and positive crowd, is I've been told again and again that we as a group have demonized the town board. And what I would say is when you're elected to public office, it doesn't mean that the people of the town don't get to appeal to you and to express their opinions and their differences regarding policy and the decisions that the town board makes. And I'm going to say again that if anybody wants to point out individual instances of what they think we are demonizing, I will apologize if that's been the case. But in fact, what we've had is differences of views about what should be done to this land. And I think it muddies the issue to bring in, it's not a personal attack to oppose the position, if indeed that's what we're doing. I mean, you know, some people have asked questions about the history of this land, and it's very complicated, I assure you. But we're forward-looking. We want to look forward. We want to have a positive vision for this town. We've already, and somebody said, well, why don't you talk to the town board? People in this group have repeatedly met with the town board, and we look forward to building this park and to getting together repeatedly and bringing the town board and our group and other people in town and many other partners together to create a park there. So it's not that we won't talk about things that have happened in the past, but we really want to focus on the future.
I don't know Hans, I'm sure he's well-meaning and stuff like that, but I'm also a lawyer, and I can tell you, once the deed changed, it doesn't matter what the town board today thinks. It could be tomorrow or the next day. They can lumber, and they can timber it, and they can farm it, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how Hans might know what the town board thinks, and it's great, but he's not on the town board. I haven't talked to the town board and stuff like that. But changing the deed on the land is extremely important, and it allows the use of the land to legally be used for something different than it is today. And I understand the farmer wants to make some permanent changes to the land, probably tiling and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a serious issue that the town board needs to consider. And, you know, I don't know if anyone's demonizing the board. I'm not party to that, but the town board's elected. It's a democracy, and so they should be up for criticism. And there's no such thing as demonizing a democracy. So changing the deed to the land is extremely serious. And as soon as you allow timbering and all that kind of stuff, I can tell you there's 50 acres, and if the present town board doesn't intend for it to be timbered, that means absolutely nothing. In 3 years, it's a different town board, and they could just clear cut the whole thing. And as I said, if there's black walnuts and stuff like that there, that is very valuable timber. And so I would be very concerned that whoever's timbering it is taking the town for a ride.
Thank you. Kathy?
Well, thank you for carrying on these conversations. I really would like us to consider having a forum on the public trust, which is what I think this gentleman just spoke about. And that means that no public land can be changed from park and recreation without what's called parkland alienation, without a full understanding by the town. So many of us stood up to argue against this deed change, which was not done properly through parkland alienation process. So other towns in Monroe County have taken tax dollars to purchase land to become park and recreation. Our town only has about 25 acres of dedicated parkland. This is such a gift to our town, and we should cherish it, but we should not have the deed changed, because that would be parkland alienation, and we would have no control over its future. Fortunately, we met with the farmer who's running it now, and he even said, you could leave those fields fallow for 20 years and they would still be intact 20 years from now. So I felt very good that he was not arguing with us. We can do something that really brings our town to treasure our heritage, our farming heritage, our beautiful, beautiful riverfront, our recognition of the railroads. We can do this, and we really do have
a growing number of partners, and that's why we wanted to have these forums. And we would maybe having an even larger community forum that can dig into some of these ideas that we have. So thank you so much for speaking about the legal issues.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what the economic development incentive is for this. Behind every deed change is an economic development incentive. So is it the farmland, is it trees, or is it a terrific site for housing in 15 or 20 years? And what is the motive for the town to really be looking at that? And that's not to say that all economic development is evil. In fact, it's not at all. But it does seem peculiar that it's become such a big deal. So what does the town gain that they've admitted?
Currently, the farmer is renting the land for $100 an acre, and when he harvests the crop, depending on what he makes off of the sale of the crop, a portion of that goes to the town. But to answer questions about the future and what other economic incentive there may be, I don't know. That question would have to be addressed to the town board.
I mean, is it possible that a developer approached them and said that he or she would like to buy land?
Not to my knowledge, but again, I can't really speak for them.
Well, I think the point is very good that we only know what people are thinking about now, and that we can't predict what future town boards might do if they had the wherewithal to do it with the deed change. But for having spoken to the farmer earlier this week, I think I understand a little better, which is the permanent changes he wants to make to the land would be to improve the drainage so that there'd be not only high yields, but consistently high yields, so that even though he's paying what some people might regard as a modest rent now, that land would be more valuable farmland. And so he says he's making it more valuable farmland for the future. So, and that would, I suppose, be win-win for the farmer and the town if you were looking at bottom line profits. That's my understanding of the short-term desire to make change to that land.
I'd like to clarify one comment that I made about the difference between the commercial and the organic farming. Our preference is that we don't do any farming on that land at this time. And the property was deeded for park and recreation. Ideally, it would be good to put it back into natural grasses until such time as things change. But for now, we're not looking to do any farming on it at all.
I think this all started with a vision. It was a vision by the former town board supervisor when the land was given to us, and a small group of people were set to task to come up with a variety of uses for the land, and that committee came and went. But then there was a group of us. This is a beautiful, beautiful gem. Sits on the river. It's hardwood trees. When you do walk it, there's all kinds of wildlife there. And I think this is all about a difference of vision for this property and for this land. And you're all here tonight, and if you share this vision, and we hope you do, we're not demonizing anyone, but it's a vision that we want to turn this into a park. So we need your voices, and we need your support if you want a park, a place where we can walk, a place where we can cross-country ski, a place where we can bike, a place where we can go and get forest therapy and take children, and it'll be safe for them. There won't be pesticides, there won't be chemicals on the land. And this is just our vision, it's our dream.
Yes, dream. Question back there. You had a question?
I have a comment.
Oh, comment, sure.
Hi, my name is Amber Corbin. It's the first time I've attended one of your evenings, and I appreciate it. I've learned quite a bit. I've been in Rush 55 plus years. I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but born and raised here, and I can remember as a little girl protesting the landfill, which was right across from this parcel. So to be active in your community and to get the word out is something very positive as to this 100 acres. I commend you on it. I was not aware that much of the goings on, so I appreciate it. I live on the Genesee River to the south. I know the general of a hardwood forest of the river, what goes on there, and I hope more people learn about the beauty of this area and what a small group of residents really can do when they see the value to their town of something beautiful like this. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't have a question.
Thank you. Chris, you wanted to make a comment?
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to describe something for you, what I see as part of my vision for this. So if you would, look at the maps up there on either side. And the areas that are open right now that are being farmed, just fast forward your vision to 50 or 100 years from now, and that being brought back to the more natural state that you see to the north end of the parcel. And those trails that you see at the north end that are like little light squiggly lines, those are trails in place on either side of the purple. And, you know, imagine some of those along the river to the south, right there. You can, you know, the parking access is there, and just trying to make it real in your imagination what that could be. And that's what people here are striving for. So, really want to welcome comments from everybody and anybody, and to address them. Part of what this group has been trying to do is to get into a dialogue with the town and to hopefully come to some kind of common ground. And to say we're not speaking for the rest of the town, well, we can't and we're not. We just are trying to put forward our vision. And by the same token, you know, without the town really asking those questions of all the residents, well, how do we get to know what they have in mind? What do they want to commit to? Or what do they want to commit not to do? So, you know, we're striving to get some feedback, and there is some cross-communication lines that are starting to come together, and that's hopeful. So anyway, back to the vision of how you might see that in 50 years or 100 years.
Thank you, Chris.
This is my second meeting, and I want to thank you for the presenters, because it's really opened my eyes to nature, so I appreciate that a lot. I guess my question is, how do we let the rest of the residents know what's going on? We've got a Rush newsletter. Can something be put in that? We've also got an election coming up in November. Can people have, I mean, how do we tap into this and let the people that are voting actually know what's going on and what the options and what the discussions are?
I could answer that question. If I were you, I would invite all the candidates for the assembly and all the candidates who are running for the state senate to a forum and put it in the newsletter. And if you have a dime, send out some sort of, if you have a not-for-profit, some sort of bulk mailing, and ask all the candidates to come and say that you're going to put a chair up for every candidate, so that if they don't come, there's an empty chair. And that it should be candidates only and not staff. And you should ask, why are you for it or against it? I mean, that's democracy. And you have a November election, and it's a sort of a one-time opportunity to hold everyone's feet to the fire, and that would get people's positions out. And you know, maybe I gather, you know, the state senator voted for the removal of the deed, but you should ask him why. And who knows, this year, I'm not campaigning for one another, but this is a tough year, and nobody really knows who's going to win and lose. I think you'd all agree, it's a non-predicting year. So I think if you told people there's going to be 100 people here, they'd be here, and that would be a way to find out. And you have very intelligent questions, and you don't have to be belligerent, and I don't think any of you are. And I find out what their positions are, and make it an important part of how you decide who you're going to support.
Thank you. Jen.
I think in answer to your question, in some ways, starting these forums, this is only the second one, has been a way to try to bring more town people in, whether they are in agreement or not. So I appreciate people that are not in agreement. We handed out little bookmarks about this at the Rush Firemen's Carnival and Parade, just trying to let people know about it, because so many people have said, I didn't even know that there was this land here and that it was deeded for park and recreation. So that's part of what we've been trying to do, is just get people's input, because it really does take a community. Maybe we're completely wrong, so if the community's against it, that's fine, but there should be some kind of possibility. So this is, although maybe we're a little bit obviously leaning toward keeping it a park, this is an opportunity for people to say, no, I don't want it to be a park. So.
I know we're going to end soon. I just want to say that, I just wonder if you could take a look at your own life and what is your vision? How long, do you have a long-range vision for yourself and your family, and for your family to come, and for the family of Rush? And I tend to take a long-range vision. I'd like to really look into the future, that we're going to leave this as a legacy to our town. We're just here for a short time. Hopefully we can enjoy some of it, but why not really think far, far ahead into what we can do for our town, and for the region, and for the river.
So what are you thinking about that?
I was going to say, Mary Ann, you mentioned the walk Saturday.
I'm Mary Ann Rizzo, 25 Stoll Road. We're going to have a walk on Saturday, 10 o'clock. And so we're going to meet sort of near the bottom of that purple triangle onto the east side, right where the transportation railroad museum. So, and you can park over there. So if you want to come at 10 o'clock on Saturday, or we can go another time if you like.
I just wanted to answer Julie's question. If there's anyone here who would like to help us spread the word, there's a stack of the fact sheets with, with two photos of the park, and also I probably should have more, but I do have about a half dozen blank survey sheets. So if you're somebody who feels that you would be willing to go in your neighborhood and share the fact sheet and try to get signatures, there's no reason not to do that. So I can send them out with people. Maybe I'll have enough for those who would be interested in doing that.
Facebook. Actually, Hans, so I was thinking about the vision. Hans has some pictures he wanted to show, but I don't think we're going to have time for that. But can you just describe, there's another mile of riverfront south of that?
Yeah, Ted and I were talking earlier, and I do have 3 PowerPoint pictures if you want to see them. But I have an aerial photograph of this, and then I have another aerial photograph of the other industry property that we don't know about apparently. There's another entire property that's twice this size to the south of Route 251 there. And it similarly is bordered by the railroad tracks on the right and the river on the left. This was incidentally the site of the town dump that we protested against.
No, it was
County dump. They wanted to build a Riga landfill there, the one that ended up in Riga. We almost ended up with right there. I have an aerial photograph that if you want to see it, if you don't have time, that's fine. It's bordered on the south by the Lehigh Valley Trail, the linear trail. So in my vision, you would have this property, you would have a property twice this large to the right, to the bottom, that's completely forested except for where the dump used to be, and has trails through there, and it would end up at the linear trail. So if you could envision a walk going from, you know, the underpass under the railroad bridge there along the river all the way to the linear trail, like a couple miles south. It's not ours. I think it belongs to state industry. My proposal is we ask the town board or a committee like yourselves to look into what it would take to get the state to give that to the town of Rush. Similarly, with no agriculture on it, and protect that land, because otherwise the state could sell it to a developer. By the way, I have another aerial photograph, of an even larger area. There's an area even bigger than that purple area there, to the north, that's a brand new housing development in Henrietta. If you zoom back in Google Maps, you'll see it. I have it on my computer if you want to see it. But our enemy here is the development of this whole area by homes. So if you step back and you guys want to talk about vision, by the way, I have nothing against letting those farm fields grow back to Mother Nature and hardwood forest someday. The whole trick is affording it. I know that's a topic for another evening. If you can come up with a proposal to afford it, that would be great.
Thank you, Hans. Anybody else? Did you have?
You mentioned that was a floodplain area, is that correct? And you mentioned that the reason they wanted to change the deed was the farmer wanted to change something permanently to help with the flooding, was that it?
Yeah, they wanted to put in drainage tiles to.
So my question is, has there been an environmental study to prove that that would work? I mean, we have a climate change situation going on where we're getting more and more and more flooding. So if we were to change the deed to make that, put in the drainage tiles, and then in 5 years, it's not going to work anyway because the river's rising. I'm just wondering if there was an environmental impact study done to prove that what he wanted to do would actually work before changing the deed.
Anyone want to comment on that?
Well, there was a fairly cursory environmental impact or environmental assessment that was done when the town passed a resolution to ask for the deed change. But the lawyer's explanation was that, well, this was just a procedural thing, and that before anything actually was done, that would be studied or subject to an environmental assessment. So that seems a little glib to me. I mean, and I at the time, I really didn't even know what was happening, even though I just have to say that there wasn't an assessment done that cited any potential negative impacts at that time, because we were told it was just a procedural change. So.
I just want to say that there are wetlands there, and if you put in the drain tiles, you're going to eliminate the wetlands. And there's a natural spring there. It's beautiful. So you would end up eliminating, I don't know what happens to the spring when you put the tiles in. I think it goes away.
I actually have a comment on what exactly is a drainage tile. I think people picture this clay thing, right? It's really a plastic pipe, right?
Right. Sorry, to explain, I'm also an environmental engineer. So it's a plastic drainage tile, and it will drain the farmland, but it will take all the pesticides and fertilizer and put it right into the Genesee River. So that's really what it's not meant to do that, but it will successfully drain the land because of the elevations that are there. It's not really that complicated an engineering task for them to do that. But the issue then becomes environmental, as in you're really just putting all kinds of fertilizers into the Genesee River, which is algae blooms and all that other kind of stuff. So when I heard that he wanted to upgrade the land for better drainage, I became even more concerned, because first of all, they're spending money on it, which means it's harder to change it, because they can say, well, we spent all this money on it. And second of all, you're just taking all that pollutant and just like throwing it right in the Genesee River. But it will increase the farm yield for sure.
Anybody else? Well, you guys have any more comments?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And